Hello and welcome. I'm Joy Ravella, the host of the Everyday Joy podcast. I'm so stoked that you're here joining me today. Oh my goodness, what a way to start the week. Some great thoughts coming up, but first, let's get into today's Bible verse.
Be cheerful no matter what. Pray all the time. Thank God no matter what happens. This is the way God wants you who belong to Jesus to live. That is the Message translation of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 16 to 18.
Now, before we unpack this verse further, I'd love to encourage you to check out the first episode of this podcast, where I break down the format and how each episode works. That way, you can just get the most out of it. But right now, let's launch into today's episode of the Everyday Joy podcast. Well, I'm super excited because today in studio, well, kind of virtually, I've got George Pink. George, so good to have you here today.
Well, hello, Joy. Real pleasure to be joining you.
Now, you'll be with us all throughout this week, which I'm so excited. We're going to unpack verses from both the New Testament, the Old Testament, covering all sorts of topics. But before we dive into it, George, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I am a minister. I'm an Anglican priest here in New Zealand, and I'm also a broadcaster. So like you, Joy, I am a radio announcer and a podcaster. And I guess I'm really passionate about sharing the good news of Jesus. And so anytime I get to combine those two things, those two areas of media and ministry, like we are doing right now in your podcast, it's something I'm always really excited to do.
Well, I'm really glad that you've set aside time to be here today, George. So let's dive into today's verse. We're taking a look today at, let me pull it up, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 16 to 18. Be cheerful no matter what, pray all the time, thank God no matter what happens. This is the way God who wants you, who belong to Jesus, to live. In terms of me and what I feel when I read this, first impressions, I feel like this verse is hard for me to form an entirely positive response around because my name is Joy. And growing up, whenever I was sad, I got that line, "You're Joy, you should be happy." And it was just the most frustrating thing to hear because I would just say, no, I'm sad, I want to feel sad, let me feel sad. And so this verse is, I think, a little triggering for me, but also I think it invites me into not just looking at the surface level. Like now that I'm older, I can understand the sentiment behind what people were trying to say when they were encouraging me to focus on the good things. But I think this verse is just so much more solid because it brings God into the equation as well. So that's my first impression. What about you?
Well, it's really interesting you use that words invite or inviting, because I feel like this is an invitation. You know, as I read these words, I think that we are being invited to live a certain way. And this is actually the way that God wants us to live. Living this way, it looks like doing the kind of things which are listed. I mean, the first one, which you've just focused on, being cheerful. There's also praying all the time. There's being thankful. And so if this is the way God wants us to live, it involves doing these sort of things. And this is the life that actually God is inviting us to. So I'm really struck by the fact that actually this is an invitation from God to live in a certain way.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to think about it. An invitation, which does actually reveal a little bit about the heart of God. What about you? What does this verse tell you about who God is or what matters to him?
Yeah, well, very much the same sort of impression, really. I was nodding along as you said that, Joy, because I think it tells me that he is a God who issues invitations. And if you think about that word invitation, it's a word with quite positive connotations, right? Like the things that we are invited to, they're usually good, positive things we want to attend. So you know, you think about being invited to like a birthday party or a wedding. Whereas on the other hand, if it's something that's like not so good, something we probably don't want to attend, then we're not really invited, we're probably summoned. So let's say, hypothetically, let's say that I have committed a really bad crime, but I'm not invited to appear in court. I'm summoned to appear in court. But I don't think that life with God is about being summoned. It's more about being invited. We are invited to live in relationship with him. And why is that? Well, it's because he's a God who loves us, who wants relationship with us. He wants to live in communion with us. And he actually offers us a certain way to live. He invites us to this way of life which really you might say is life in all its fullness.
Yeah. I love that. The difference between an invitation and a summon, because so much of what we hear and see about God these days is, I suppose, that sort of perspective of being summoned, of being, told or being reprimanded, but it's just such a flip of his actual character, and an invitation is a really beautiful way to think about it. Has this verse come alive in your life in any personal way?
Well, part of the verse talks about praying all the time, which I think we could really say is about living a life of constant prayer, right? And to be honest, this is something that I have struggled to apply in my own life. I think I have struggled with constant prayer for quite a long time, for many years. But recently, I guess in the last few years, something that I have found really helpful is to develop a regular daily rhythm of prayer. So if you like, it is a routine of prayer that I can stick to.
Yeah.
And so I have committed to pray in certain ways at certain times every day. And this is whether I feel like it or not, whether I feel very spiritual or very prayerful on that particular day, because let's be real, on some days it comes more easily than on others, right?
Yeah.
But actually, this sort of constant prayer, whether I feel like it or not, day in, day out, actually it has made, I think, and continues to make such a big impact on my life. It really makes a big difference. And I think now, having done this for a little while, I can say that honestly, I don't know where I'd be. I don't know what my Christian walk would be like without that regular rhythm of prayer. And I think part of what I find helpful when I don't feel like praying, when it is a struggle, is that this isn't necessarily something I have to do. Actually, it's something I want to do because I want to respond to that invitation we've been talking about. God is inviting me to spend time with him, to live life with him. And actually, if I step back and I think about it, yes, that's an invitation I want to RSVP to.
Yeah, because I'm thinking this as well. I can understand and see the fruit of you putting discipline around your prayer life. But putting all those processes and the checklist in place, does that rob the joy or the creativity or the spontaneity of something that's so spiritual and fluid? Or, I don't know, how did you balance the two?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it is a kind of a tension I've held. I think for me, it has been really helpful to have that sort of rhythm and routine around prayer over the last few years. And actually, this is something that Christians have done for centuries. They talk about spiritual disciplines going right back to the earliest centuries of the Christian church. And I think for so many people, they've actually found that helpful. If it's something that we really value, that we think is really important in our lives, maybe it is something worth committing to, maybe having a bit of discipline around. I think of it in terms of like a fitness or a health regime. Some days I feel like going for a run, some days I don't. Same with going to the gym or doing any sort of that stuff. But because it's something I value, actually it's something I think that is worth committing to and having a bit of discipline around. I mean, yes, it's different because it is a relationship with the living God, but for me, actually having some of that structure, and it might be different for others, but for me, having some of that structure has been a really helpful thing.
One of my favourite C.S. Lewis quotes, by the way, he is the author of The Chronicles of Narnia and many other amazing works. He said, I pray because I can't help myself. I pray because I'm helpless. I pray because the need flows out of me all the time, waking and sleeping. It doesn't change God. It changes me. And I think that's the point I really want to focus on today. Sometimes we can look at prayer like a favor we owe to God, maybe a summoning, a thing off a checklist, when in reality, prayer is inherently good for you and I. It's good for us. It makes our lives better. It's like vegetables, right? When you're a kid and you don't really understand too much about it, it's a chore to eat them. But as you get older, you begin to enjoy them. You begin to enjoy the way eating them makes you feel, because ultimately, it adds value to your life. So today, I want us to take a moment to ask ourselves, what do we really think of praying regularly? Now, if your first thought is a bit like mine, another thing on the to-do list, that's a really great place for us to go back and correct our thought process, because it's not just another checklist. It's not a summoning. It's an invitation. Maybe instead of saying to ourselves, I have to pray, we can instead say, Man, I get to pray every day. I get to pray regularly. I get to meet and talk to God, and He turns up for me every single time. Can you just imagine what a difference to our prayer life thinking that way would make? 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verses 16 to 18. Be cheerful no matter what. Pray all the time. Thank God no matter what happens. This is the way God wants you who belong to Jesus to live. Well, that wraps up today's episode of the Everyday Joy podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe, tell your friends and family about it, and I can't wait to catch up tomorrow for another episode of the Everyday Joy podcast.